Hello everyone, Jai Mohanji. Welcome once again to our Sunday special, Living Grace, Voices of Guru Leela. So here we are today to be reading about from a testimonial from Guru Leela, Book 2, Volume 2, and it is beautifully titled Flowers of Gratitude to Mohanji. Yeah, it's gratitude that keeps us going. It's gratitude for all the small things in life that helps us lead a positive life and various testimonials that we have been reading the past few weeks, and the various testimonials that are there in the Guru Leela books stand testimony actually to that gratitude, and also gives us that beautiful insight into the different aspects of Mohanji. Secondly, it also helps us to connect with Mohanji and also realize the kind of experiences that we have had, which can be an inspiration for us, particularly at times when we are low, and at other times it helps inspire others on the path, just like you and me. So, welcome to all of you who are watching me today on the Mohanji and I YouTube page. And today we'll be reading from Guru Leela Book 2, Flowers of Gratitude to Mohanji. And I've chosen a very interesting testimonial written by Milan Boek, Serbia, Retreat in the Himalayas with Mohanji. So let's start listening, or you can start listening to this as I read. And if you have any comments or anything to share, you can always write to us at testimonials@mohanji.org so that we can connect and we can publish these testimonials. So thank you to all those who have joined us now, and for all those who have been giving us beautiful feedback and about the reading. So let's all get together and get to know Mohanji more and more, the way people look at Mohanji and the way the experiences unfolds itself to each one of us because of our Guru and the path that we are in. Okay, so let's start. Retreat in the Himalayas with Mohanji by Milan from Serbia. Being in the physical proximity of a master can be a tricky thing. Milan shares his beautiful experiences spent in bliss with Mohanji, leading to a complete transformation of his personality, burning and letting go of all the past accumulations. One gets to vividly experience the profound joy of being purified by a master with holy dips in the most sacred of all rivers, Ma Ganga. The strongest realization of his experience is one of the various facets of his Shiva, Guru Mohanji, in both the manifested and the unmanifested forms. I came to India on Mohanji's invitation to participate in his first Himalayan retreat, which took place in Rishikesh and Haridwar in 2014. This was not the first time for me to take part in one of Mohanji's programs. I had already spent 2 years of devoted spiritual practice under his guidance. This time, the setting was way more spectacular and intensive. The day would start at the time of Brahma Muhurat, or the most subtle time of the day, from 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. We used to drink 2 liters of water and eat 11 almonds. Our goal was to trigger the body detoxification. Then, after an hour, we would start our long yoga lesson and special breathing exercises. Breakfast would be followed by a satsang with Mohanji. After lunch, we had some time to rest, and then we would have some meditations taught by Mohanji. Finally, the day would close with an evening satsang, dinner, and early bedtime. Such an intensive program also had an addition of almost everyday visits to holy places and temples of well-known masters and deities. I noticed that my focus on chaos and mess dominating the Indian way of life was still strong. However, the moment we'd enter a temple, I would feel as if I had stepped onto a paradise island. My consciousness would immediately expand, the mind would settle, and heart would fill with bliss. From temple to temple, from ashram to ashram, I gradually started getting the real picture of India. It was a very multi layered picture, full of invisible overlapping levels. Simultaneously, the modern, chaotic, polluted, overpopulated India and the ancient, pure, spiritual, enlightened Vedic India would exist side by side. Every time we left an ashram, I would feel as if I had been leaving the paradise island and diving into the ocean of hell and chaos. It would last for a while until the next temple visit. This emotional, intellectual, and energy roller coaster was tearing my being apart and made me feel like a kitten stuck in a washing machine. Rishikesh is a marvelous place if you're a true spiritual seeker. Otherwise, if you come only as a tourist, it's just an ordinary Indian village on the banks of the Ganges. One of the last days of our stay in Rishikesh was reserved for visiting the cave of the famous ancient saint Vashishta. We jumped into an old rickety bus and set off upstream the Ganges. We passed through magical landscapes painted by the serpentine flow of the holiest river on earth. Mother Ganges was green and cold. After a while, we reached our destination. The energy of the holy cave was beyond any known descriptive terms. Simply, you could feel that the place didn't belong to the earthly vibrations. We meditated for some time in the cave in the presence of our beloved Mohanji, made our bows to the ancient Rishi Vashishta, and moved on towards the banks of the Ganges. An old Swami, who has known Mohanji from his formative days, was staying at the ashram built around the cave. The encounter was so moving and charged with energy that many had tears in their eyes. Swami was melting in the bliss. His deep state of consciousness could be clearly felt. After the blessings Swami bestowed on us, we headed towards the mighty Ganges with the intention of washing away centuries of sinful lives and wasted incarnations. We entered the water one by one. The current was so strong and the rocks so slippery that many managed to get in only ankle deep. Mohanji held on to me and him, and slowly, step by step, we entered the water to the waist. The ice cold of the crystal water was penetrating to our very bones. We sank in one by one while Mohanji took on his recognizable Shiva look. His eyes became bloodshot, the look sharp and penetrating like a diamond blade, his facial expression serious and powerful. I was melting in his presence and thanking God for the opportunity to stand in the holy river Ganges next to my enlightened master and my spiritual father. This was my first spiritual encounter with the Ganges at the most beautiful place I had ever seen. I found it interesting that the whole landscape, together with the green Ganges, reminded me of my own birthplace and the river Drina, where I first learned how to swim. We were sitting on the banks, some on the big round rocks, some on the sand, absorbing the lovely sun rays. We were imbued with purity down to the last cell. There was only that perfect moment in time, carefree and innocent, on its own without any additions. The blue green, ice cold crystal river, the sand and the rock, the sun and us. Perfection of simplicity. After the time spent in Rishikesh, we headed towards Haridwar. The stay in Haridwar passed in devoted sadhana, visiting various ashrams and temples, and the special event of taking yet another bath in the Ganges, only this time at the well known location of the great festival Kumbh Mela. I remember that day was a celebration of a holiday dedicated to Lord Shiva in India. We came to the place where a channel was separated from the Ganges mainstream, tamed by the concrete blocks. The current was so strong in that part of the river that the concrete shield had iron chains installed so people could hold on to them while entering the water. The day was lovely, the sky clear and blue, and a few eagles were circling just above the place our group was standing. Mohanji and I looked at the sky at the same moment and then turned towards each other. This is Vishnu sending his blessings, Mohanji told me. Eagle is a symbol. I felt the depth of his words and headed towards the Ganges with great exhilaration. A few of us entered the freezing fast water. I managed to find my balance and was standing without holding on to the chain. Spontaneously, Mohanji's disciples made a circle around him. Maria and I were standing right in front of him. We took our dips one by one, and he smilingly looked at each of us individually. The Ganges made him the purest Shiva in every essence, in every sense. His figure, facial expression, hair, beard, eyes looked like a statue of a deity in an ancient temple. When looking at those penetrating bloodshot eyes, I would gain such elation and superhuman power. I felt I would be ready to fight to the last piece of the atom, to the last breath, for this illuminated holy man. He was Shiva himself, and my soul was rejoicing from the privilege of standing next to him. At that moment, Mohanji started pouring water over us with his own hands. The faces of the disciples who were present appeared to be in a trance with blissful smiles and teary eyes, receiving every drop of water that fell from his hands. He splashed the water over my face a few times, smiling. With my mouth open, I drank the drops that were falling. I closed my eyes and immersed myself into the Ganges. I had a feeling of bathing in a white liquid crystal. It was an ethereal river outside the physical dimension of existence. I felt it penetrating my cells and bathing every atom of my body. Oh my God, this moment alone had a greater value than all the euphoria, parties, love adventures, and joys I had experienced. The divine bliss is the sweetest and the most intoxicating drink, so hidden and inaccessible. I was slowly starting to understand the disinterestedness of the saints and masters for this world. Their mouths drink the purest divine nectar. So, how could they be attracted to the stale pond water? Bathed and cleansed, changed and enriched, we returned to the luxurious resort where we were staying. Another important event was awaiting us, and many were eagerly expecting it. We got up so early it was still dark outside. The full moon was illuminating the complex, making the Ganges glisten magically. The whole group of the Himalayan retreat participants gathered at the holy river bank. We spread the blankets, yoga mats, and sitting cushions and started making the fire bed. On the day of the full moon and the monthly Shivratri, Mohanji decided to hold a homa, the ritual of purification through fire. I had already witnessed this ritual a few times before, and every time he had been the one in charge of preparing and keeping the fire alive. I don't know why Mohanji used to choose me for that task. This time, some other people were preparing the fire, and I really enjoyed participating in the ritual as an ordinary disciple with no duties. Mohanji came dressed completely in white, with a white scarf on his head. Everyone got pieces of camphor, a coconut, some twigs, and a piece of paper. The purpose of the ritual was to concentrate on our problems and weaknesses with strong resolution to get rid of them. Fully focused, it was necessary to feel the energy and the negativity of the problems we wanted to release, move it into the coconut, the piece of camphor or twigs, and then we threw these things into the fire to burn. When the fire was strong enough, Mohanji completely melted into it, took over, and burnt the disciples' karma. Fire is the only element that can't be contaminated. All the other elements can be polluted and poisoned. Only fire is able to purify and transform. I strongly focused on releasing all the unwanted traits and problems that were bothering me. Everything was mostly revolving around the karma related to finances and ancestors. Each of us had our turn a few times in order to throw all the objects that were given to us into the fire. During the ritual, the fire was becoming wilder and more capricious. You could discern strange forms and beings in its flames. The sounds of breaking and unusual black smoke would occasionally slash the space around us. Mantras were strongly reverberating down the banks of the Ganges, while the red sun was creating a new day. We were singing loudly and excitedly, knowing we were witnessing a magnificent event that would change our life from the root. At one moment, the mantra, Om Shri Gurudeva Datta, started ringing. This was the holiest of mantras, celebrating the first Guru of humanity and the Guru principle of the God himself, teaching the whole universe. Mohanji belongs to the Dattatreya tradition, and I knew that was the universal tradition of the whole humanity, which has only one mission and goal: to liberate man from the claws of illusion. I belong to Dattatreya. I knew it was the truth, deepest truth, eternal and indestructible, which overcomes all religious divisions of today's fallen society. The mantra was reverberating so powerfully in my head that I had a feeling I would explode like an overblown balloon. I felt an expansion in all directions. I started growing upwards and observing everything from a bird's perspective. My eyes were closed, but I was able to see just as if they had been opened. There was no difference. I could see everything clearly. I was chanting the mantra together with other 40 souls around me, but I only heard one voice and felt one being. One throat was singing, one sound was echoing in the air. The sense of unity was enormously strong. I felt the oneness of the all pervading being which was expressing through countless forms. It was an unmatched force, superior and indestructible, conscious and intelligent. I tasted God, at least for a moment. I looked in Mohanji's direction and saw a massive column of light sprouting from his body towards the sky. I looked up at the light column and saw a huge cloud of light hovering above the whole space. In a split second, I realized Mohanji was actually the cloud of consciousness and light. His body was just a vehicle. He could get in and out of the vehicle as he wished. He could float in the vastness of the universe any way he wanted. I was still feeling like a 3 meter tall giant, and the image I was seeing was so clean and clear that I got confused for a moment and thought my eyes had been opened. In order to recover from the surprise, I opened my eyes and saw the completely same scenery. Indeed, there was no difference between what I was seeing with my eyes open or closed. I had never had such an experience. I was completely paralyzed. I don't know how long it took me to be able to speak and gesticulate again, but the ritual had been over by then. All that remained from the fire was the scorch mark of the burnt karma. We were told not to touch that ash and to bury the fire bed so no one could accidentally be contaminated with our burnt remains. I approached Mohanji and told him about the experience I had had. I described the light column going out of his body and merging with a huge cloud of light and consciousness. He confirmed the accuracy of everything I had seen and told me to write down my experience so people could hear about his true nature. Mohanji's destiny is the same as the destiny of almost all the masters. While they are alive, they remain unknown to the majority of people. But after death, their glory spreads like wildfire. It took me 2 years to digest the experience I had that morning at the riverbank of the Ganges in Haridwar and to get the inspiration to describe it. Time is irrelevant in this case. The message will find its way to those who are ready and meant to receive it. The Himalayan retreat came to an end and people were saying goodbye and packing their bags. Mohanji invited us to spend a bit more time with him in Dharmashala. It was a privilege one dreams about. 2 weeks in the proximity of the Master leaves a permanent, eternal effect on your entire being. We settled into one of the residences which were rented for the needs of Mohanji and his disciples. The slopes of the Himalayas dominated the view, no matter where you turned. And finally, at the foothills of the Himalayas, I remember my childhood when I kept repeating to my parents that I would one day visit Tibet. My mother, in particular, laughed at my words. My connection to the Himalayas endured in my subconscious mind in very strange ways. Now that the goal was finally achieved, I was looking at the vast mountain peaks and ranges forming long, seemingly endless wrinkles on the horizon. I felt at home. Days with Mohanji passed comfortably and stress free. Being close to the enlightened master is a tricky thing and it can be fatal to an unready speaker. His glow of divine consciousness continually pressures the corporeal, mental, emotional, and all other earthly structures of one's personality. To make things more paradoxical, an enlightened consciousness which pierces everything around it emanates from a seemingly ordinary human body, character, name, style, etc., which the master uses as his earthly vessel. Many seekers would abandon their gurus if they saw them shaving or wearing perfume. It clashed with their image of an enlightened master. Our Guruji, Mohanji, used a delightful perfume and he dressed for the occasion, sometimes in sports attire, other times in traditional garments or in elegant clothes. He used all the modern gadgets to communicate with his devotees around the world. He spent time on Facebook, watched YouTube, and laughed at funny videos. He ordered the young chef named Ram to make us the most delicious dishes of southern India, and he occasionally played badminton with us in the courtyard. One morning, we were sitting gathered around the dining table, waiting for him to come down to start breakfast. We noticed that he stayed in the toilet for a long time. He was descending the stairs. He gave us one of those amazing looks that every person has after relieving himself, and he said with relief, "Much better. It's always good when you can relieve yourself nicely." This remark of his caused a cascade of laughter amongst us, but at the same time, I thought about the difficult position of the closest disciples who spent a lot of time with the Master and listened to similar normal human conversations. After a while, a person can forget himself because forgetfulness is the most important human trait, so no one can take the Guru too lightly and create certain distorted ideas about him as a personality. Yes, a guru goes to the toilet, shaves, wears perfume, wears whatever clothes he wants. He can drink beer or have a cigarette. He can even have sex. But a guru can also sit in a cave in the Himalayas without any of those things and still be equally satisfied. No one can explain how the human constitution, which has achieved enlightenment, functions. Very frequently, these people are outcasts from the society, insane people, or then again, perfectly normal family people whose status you wouldn't be able to recognize unless you were a highly developed seeker. The worst thing a person can do in the presence of a true master is to start measuring him, judging him, and assessing him. That is doomed to fail in itself. All that is asked from us when we are in the presence of a master is to open our eyes and catch that invisible glow and the purity, the divine consciousness that emanates from him. To achieve that, the disciple must be suitable, his perception subtle and well toned, his heart pure, or at least wanting to be pure, and his mind somewhat tamed. I witnessed many situations where people threw themselves at Mohanji's feet, telling him how they wanted to give their lives for him, to serve him forever, and so on. These same people would, in some crazy burst of egotism or karma or whatever, start talking wild things about that same man, creating unimaginable anti campaigns. I have witnessed personally a few big breaks in the organization around Mohanji and saw all the filth of the human condition. the betrayal, the insanity, and the egotism. I felt the impacts of negative thoughts, doubts, and attempts to twist my own experience by my infected mind. But through humble prayers to God, meditation, and devoted practice, I would always emerge from these crises and find a new strength of faith and discipline. People find it difficult to move beyond the physical form. That test is so hard to pass. The master's form, personality, and character that he inevitably has to have in order to exist in the earthly plane often completely fools the disciples, whether for good or bad. They fail to reach God who hides behind the form of the master. They fail to devote themselves to the form that God took to stand before them. They don't realize that only one person speaks through countless faces, bodies, and mouths. All the stories have been told. Everything has been done. Everything has been seen. But due to our forgetfulness and ignorance, the supreme consciousness is materialized and assumes forms through which it can approach us in the given time and space. My connection to Mohanji is the product of many lives that I have spent working spiritually with other masters who were suitable to my life at that time. But all the time, I was communicating, working, and living only with God in His countless forms. Everything has been described in the Holy Scriptures. There is nothing to add to the eternal themes of the forms of existence and the essence that lies beyond the form which creates a said form. Some seekers find it easier to relate to various forms of God, so they worship entire pantheons of deities, gurus, saints, etc., whereas others seek only Nirguna, Parabrahma, or the eternal, non manifested consciousness and the essence that lies beyond all existence. More often than not, each group accuses the other of being wrong. The paradox is that everyone is right because there are no mistakes in God. We were sitting in the living room and talking about odds and ends. Monji was in a very good mood. He talked about a new book that he was writing at the time about an extraordinary experience of melting with the cosmic Shivalinga, the sun of existence, a million times brighter than our own sun. His words cast us into a mild trance, and we could feel the force of the experience that he transferred in this way onto everyone present. It was touching and auspicious to listen to the Master speaking about his divine experiences. He left us floating in the transcendence of time and space for a while, and then cheerfully took his laptop and invited us to watch the stupidest Indian film ever made. We could not believe what he had played. The absolute shock blocked even the slightest hints of laughter. Mohanji explained that the man who made the film was so persistent in his desire to become a filmmaker that he took a video camera and recorded the masterpiece of stupidity. He somehow found a woman who agreed to be filmed and created the first amateur love film in his own production. He then tried to show that film in cinemas, but nobody would let him. Through some strange ways, he managed to get a hold of a cinema in the countryside and he showed his film to the village audience. People were so impressed by the stupidity of the film that the story about an idiot who recorded a terrible movie started to spread like wildfire. People were rushing to the cinemas to see this masterpiece of stupidity. His success was guaranteed. After a short while, the whole of India knew about the stupidest film ever recorded, and its director, cameraman, actor, and producer became a star overnight. The story doesn't end here. As the creator of the stupidest film, he started being invited to reality TV programs and various TV shows, hoping for the continuation of the stupidity live. However, they were in for a shock. The filmmaker was anything but stupid. He talked about spirituality, life, wisdom, and other important topics. The audiences were in shock. How was it possible? Everyone was wondering. On the other hand, the filmmaker just smiled, continuing to film his stupid movies, not because he was good at what he was doing, but because he loved what he was doing. We were shaken by the breadth of frequencies that Mohanji exposed us to. from the divine transcendence and cosmic Shivalinga to the stupidest film ever filmed in India, all the way to the wise filmmaker and his pure motives. All I could conclude after that evening was that Mohanji was anything but a simple man. Beg your pardon. He wanted to show us the complete scale of existence, from the supreme wisdom to the biggest stupidity, and teach us to observe, both with ease and collectedness. Mohanji is a very special person with an unusual character. At the same time, he is a family man, modern and sane, but also quick, unconventional, capricious, and ancient. His directness and magnetism are outstanding. Love and bliss emanate from his every pore, but there was no relaxing because lightning could flash at any moment and spark a large blaze. Beloved Shiva. One evening, he gave us a musical performance. We would play video clips of legendary pop and rock songs with on-screen lyrics, while Mohanji sang like a happy child. He told us that he had a band as a young man and that he wrote heavy metal songs. He knew all the hits we grew up on, from Jimi Hendrix, The Doors, Metallica, The Beatles, Led Zeppelin, Bob Dylan, Pink Floyd, etc., all the way to gentle pop ballads and love songs. I still keep the playlist we listened to with him that evening. The energy was so frenzied and strong that we had a hard time going to sleep. We stayed up until late, listening to our beloved Mohanji singing rock hits. It was worth the reincarnation just for that moment. Tears welled up in my eyes at the thought about the precious intimacy that was given to us in our relationship with the Master, of whom the generations will still learn and whose miracles testify all through the universe. We were sitting at the foothills of the Himalayas with a holy man and listening to rock. God works in mysterious and magnificent ways. Never doubt that. India turned off so many things inside of us by waking up the dawn of true consciousness. In just a month, in the presence of a true master in the ancient land of the enlightened, we cast away the centuries of dark layers and wrong desires. The goodbye was touching but immersed in tranquility and silence. I asked Mohanji how to go on when we return to our motherland. He replied, spread the harmony all around you. Be the light and the example to others. Jai Mohanji. What an amazing and a beautiful story. As I was reading this, one other thought that came up to my in my mind was recently, not recently, maybe a couple of maybe 2 3 years back in Bangalore, Monji had one of his dear friends visiting him, and they had a karaoke session. So Mohanji was singing, belting out all those beautiful Hindi songs in the karaoke, and it was really divine watching him childlike and enjoying those songs immensely. So that was something that came to my mind, and I thought I'll just share that with all of you. And yeah, so now you too have this chance to come to India. When? During the Kumbh Mela, which is happening in January and February of 2025. I'm sure many of you have signed up for this. And for those of you who have not, please do so. So you can also come and witness this beautiful ancient country with all its crowd and pollution and so on, but under the beautiful umbrella of grace of Mohanji. Right? So we hope to see all of you at the Kumbh Mela soon. And with Mohanji's blessings and grace, I'm sure it'll happen. Just plunge in and visit us in India and get the taste of this beautiful land, Bharat. So with that, I'll wind up for today and we'll meet you again next Sunday. Till then, have a great week and Jai Mohanji.